interviewing Ben Simmons at his home by the airport on Wednesday, November 28, 1972. And I think if we just talk into the microphone, normal conversation tone, we'll be able to pick everything up. Ben, the first thing I'm going to ask you is, what date were you born?
August the 19th in 1905.
And where?
In Fort Sheridan, Illinois. An Army brat.
Your father was in the Army?
Oh, yes. My father was in the Army at the time.
What was his career officer?
Yes, he was a career... No, he was in career non-commissioned officer. He was regimental sergeant major at that particular time. And he, later on, in later years, was commissioned as captain. I think total was the double time for his duty during war years, the Spanish-American War and the Hawaiian Insurrection and the Boxer Rebellion. I think you get double time for that, at least back in that day we did. So that I think his career total, as I recall it, 18 years.
Did your father ever tell you the exploits and so forth and the campaigns that he was in, that you remember?
Oh, yes, a good many of them. Of course, it's been so many years ago, a good many of the details of what happened I've forgotten since, of course, my father died in 1950, so it's been a good many years since he's repeated any of his experiences, but he did have quite a large number of photos that were taken during the Philippine Island expedition. And they were involved in fighting the Moros, if you recall, back in history that time. And those were quite interesting, and the strange thing is, at this time, no one in the family seems to remember any more what happened to them. They certainly do something to have today where they round up. But as a good many career men in the Army, they just don't talk too much about their experiences. For example, my youngest brother, John, was an A-20 bomber pilot in World War II. And he had quite a lot of experience, of course, in Africa, and he was shot down, assassinated, and captured and incarcerated by the Germans in Italy, and later on with a couple other fellows escaped, and of course they had a tremendous adventure. But even he never talked about it, and never has since that time. I don't know, they just seem to bury those things in the past as something, doesn't it happen to everybody? And as a result, right. They don't talk much about it.
What was your father's background? Where was he born and raised?
He was born and raised in northwestern Iowa, out in the corn country. I think the name of the city in the area in which he grew up was Orange City, Iowa. And of course I can remember back when I was just at an age old enough to have some vague memories of what went on. I can remember being out there in the summertime and getting lost in those huge cornfields that grew out there, and still do, I guess.
What was your mother's maiden name?
My mother's maiden name was John Berg Peterson. She was born in Sweden. She came over here as a young girl, and she lived in Lake Forest, Illinois, which was adjacent to Fort Sheridan, and she met my father at an Army dance, as I recall. And, of course, they were married, and in later years, when my dad left the Army, they moved to Chicago, where we lived until 1939, when Dorothy and I, of course, we had been married in the meantime, came down here.
So you really grew up in Chicago?
Yes, I spent, from 5 to 39, 34 years in Chicago.
Did you basically live in one area of Chicago?
Yes, we always lived on the southwest side, as near as I can remember. We lived in rented apartments or flat buildings, they were called in that day back there for some years until my father bought a home out in Chicago, and we lived out there Oh, during the later years of my grammar school education, and of course, this time I went to high school in Chicago.
But basically then, as a young boy and a young man, you lived in one area.
Right.
In Chicago. You had to just southwest Chicago. And you went to school there?
Yes, went to school in the local grammar school. And then I went to Lindblom High School. And it just so happened that school was opened the very year that I entered, in 1919. So I was in the first 4-year graduating class from Lindblom High School.
And what did you do after you graduated from high school?
Oh, after I graduated from high school, I went to work. I think as most of us did back in that day. And I worked for a shipping company for quite a number of years.
Doing what?
In the general office as a clerk to begin with, and then as I got a little older, and after I was married, I worked in the sales organization in the city market, of which I guess the company at that time had 10 or 12 in various sections, probably. I think the last one which I worked where I was the manager called Inglewood Market out in the southwest side of Chicago, and I was there for quite a few years.
What do you remember as a boy growing up in Chicago?
Well, the area in which we lived was a good deal like living in Wabash is today. The southwest side of Chicago, Chicago being the name of the suburb, if you will, was almost a village in itself. So it was a good deal just like living in Wabash is today. I mean, we lived rather on the edge of the suburb, and to the west of us was open prairie. And, well, at that time, of course, Cicero Avenue and 63rd Street, where Midway Airport is today in Chicago, was a big farm that belonged to some people that we knew. And it was rather a rural type of living. More so than if you lived further into Chicago, where you lived in the big city front, so to speak. And, well, summertime, when we weren't going to school, we used to work out in the onion fields and truck patches, and the farmers close by, and they were close enough that we could walk there. Of course, now, as we do occasionally go back to visit the areas in which we live, it's altogether different now.
Was it?
Oh, yes. Chicago is just essentially part of the big city. In fact, all the areas where we used to know the kids out in the prairies. It was all apartment complexes and condominiums and buildings from miles beyond where we played even as kids.
So how did you happen to come to Wabash?
Well, we had some friends who lived in the little village of Dora that we used to visit occasionally on weekends, and we kind of liked it down here, so we bought a little place that became available on the river there in Dora, and we used to come down on weekends and spend vacations down there. Then in 1939, we decided just to cut bait and come down here to live, which we did.
You didn't have a job anywhere?
No, I worked for quite a few years with a local boy by the name of Glenn Brock, who did contracting carpenter work. Worked with him during the early war years until about in the early part of 1945, when I came to town to get a job for the winter, and it was cold. Walked into Honeywell and got a job on second shift, and there I stayed until the day I retired.
Who was the personnel man back then? How did you go about getting a job?
Well, I just walked in there one afternoon. Temperature, I think, was about 15-12-0, and it was a little mean working outside, so I just walked in and saw the personnel man. I just can't recall his name now. And asked for a job. He said, "You ever worked in factory before?" And I said, "No." Told him what I'd been doing. He said, "Well, we could use a drill press man on the second shift." So I said, "Well, I'm your boy." So that's what I started
What wages did they pay that in?
Well, they paid on a dual basis. They had a day rate system and then also sequence. So I think the day rates that started in at 45 cents an hour, and then you went to 50 and then to 55 cents. But actually your earnings were at that time about double that amount on the sequence basis in the shop. And of course this was during the years when Honeywell was engaged entirely in war production.
Well, what was your first job in?
My first job there was a drill press operator.
Working for whom?
Let's see, Elmer Rice was the supervisor of the drill press. Cyril Cole was the foreman of the second shift, and Mullendore was the general foreman of the whole machine shop.
So where was the machine shop located?
The machine shop, of course, then was located in the building downtown, which was where the plane dealer is now. The office.
Right, Canal Street.
Right.
Yeah. Did you like the working conditions?
Yes, I did. That was the strange thing, as I mentioned previously. I come in to get a job inside, get out of the cold weather, and well, I just liked working for Honeywell and the people that worked there so well. I stayed there. I never did go back to my former occupation.
How long did you stay on the drill press?
Well, I stayed on the drill presses several months, and then one of the fellows that ran the screw machine was leaving to do something else, so they asked me if I wanted to learn to run a screw machine. And I said, yep, that's for me. So I ran the screw machine then until the cessation of hostilities, when, of course, all that type of work was gone. And most of us, particularly those who don't have come there lately, were laid off until, I think in August of 45. Molly came out to see me one time and wanted to know if I'd was interested in coming back to work anyway. I said, yes, sure. So I went back and started back working on the drill press again. And they were expanding the punch press department considerably at that time and bringing in some new work. So at their request, I went over to learn the punch press business. So I stayed in that for a couple of years. I guess, let's see, 45 until about 47 or 48. And at that time, a big job was brought in that was new to the company, that was making furnace hot air outlets when you return air intake, that place in registry, called the registry department. And Doc Leland, who was then the personnel man, asked me, I'd like to learn that particular phase of it and hit it up when it got going. So that started my regime in the administrative end of the business as a supervisor of the registry department. I stayed in that particular capacity until about 1949, when another big job that the company had been doing on the subcontract basis in the Chicago area was brought here. That was the damper business. And at that time, I was relegated to general foreman over both the damper and the registry department. In that position, I stayed for quite a few years. And I think that was the basic time during which I really got new experience with the company, because the product that was made in the damper department was used primarily in commercial buildings. And as a result, of course, they were shipped all over the country and parts of some foreign countries. So as I became acquainted with and knowledgeable in the damper buildings, it became my privilege to do considerable traveling for the company, installation of dampers and technical problems in the road. And I should think that was probably the most interesting kind of experience.
Do you remember any outstanding problems that you had with nurses at that time?
Yes. In any large installation, particularly a couple that I remember very well, was in the atomic energy facilities in Paducah, Kentucky, and another one in Ohio. Of course, all of the engineering is done by various engineering companies, and as a result, they usually have some of their own ideas, technically. So there was a lot of liaison work with the design and technical engineering in the damper business, because the standard type that we made for general use in commercial buildings sometimes didn't fit in too well with the ideas that some of the engineers had. So this was where the interesting part of the work for me was working with those engineers to develop within the limits of our capacity something that was satisfying. And in all cases, they were successful in doing it. And of course, one of the most interesting trips that I made for the company in connection with designing and building dampers was a trip to Saudi Arabia, working with the engineers of the Canal Street pipeline company, which was a subsidiary of the Arabian American Oil Company. And they had recently, at that time, replaced several of their diesel pumping stations along the pipeline that came from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea with a different type of system of cars. One in which involved these huge diesel-powered dynamo-type jet engines, actually, is what they were to drive the pump. In this type of operation, of course, there's a tremendous quantity of waste heat that's expelled to the atmosphere. So Honeywell has designed a system to utilize that heat for heating hot water in the camp area, and indeed in the wintertime, as it does get cold in the desert in the winter. And one of the facets that we, of course, were involved in Wabash and campers was to build a fail-proof damper, a system of dampers that works with the exhaust gases and turbines to flow the hot gases through a heat exchanger in the wintertime or whenever hot water was needed, and expel it through another system of dampers in the atmosphere when it wasn't needed. Since this was all new and had never done before, the Capline company wanted somebody from the damper factory to come over it, so I got an opportunity to spend about a total of 3 weeks in Beirut, Lebanon, where the headquarters were, and then out on the field in the desert in Saudi Arabia, where the actual installation was done.
What year would that have been?
That was in 1958.
They paid all your expenses out of it.
Well, actually, the pipeline company paid all the expenses. At that time, they had 3 transatlantic aircraft that were used to transport freight and their people back and forth between the Arabian locations, Beirut and Lebanon, the headquarters, and New York City. So I was flown over on one of the regular flights over to Arabia, and the same way returning. And of course, in Saudi Arabia, they don't have tourist visitors, and the only way you get into Arabia is via the work route. So, of course, as I was going over as a tech rep from the country, I was going over then as a worker. So, after having had all the necessary inoculations and all of the passports and the visas and so forth, I got to board. And it was really an unusual experience from a little town like Wabash.
Did you find that the dancers were performing like
Oh, yes, yeah. We, of course, had designed those that we thought would do the work required there. And what actually happened is the first
groups that we built to be installed in this one location were flown over at the same time I went over. So I got to help superintend the installation hookup. But essentially that's what I was there for. But naturally, when you go that far, you have a few moments of pleasure involved in it as well. I got to spend 3 days in Jerusalem going over and also in weeks back. And it so happened, that was at a time when the American Expeditionary Forces, came into Beirut at the request or to Lebanon at the request of the government to stop communist takeover, which seemed like it would be inevitable at that time. It's really strong.
That's the idea of it.
Right.
Well, those were exciting times.
Oh, they were, yes, because most all of the families of the people who worked for the gasoline company in Beirut, the officers were brought back to this country, so it was only the men that were left there at that particular time, the American men. And curfew was every night at 7 o'clock, as I recall, and then being off the street. And there was sporadic shooting every night. Just almost any time you'd wake up in the night, you'd hear gunfire. So it was extremely interesting.
Was it hot out on the job then?
Yes, in the daytime, this was in October. Late September and October when I was there. And the temperatures out in the desert in the daytime was in the 110, 120. And at night, at that time, it didn't get cold. It was cool. Some nights you'd have a sweater on. But it was balmy. And of course, the atmosphere was exceedingly dry. I think the relative humidity was around 10 to 15%. So the chances are, even though the temperatures might be in the 70s at night, it didn't feel cold because the air was dry.
And do you acknowledge today the Honeywell dampers are still working?
It's been back about 10 years ago, of course, when I last talked to the young man from the New York office with the pipeline factory. He was over there at the same time I was. And now they were still something.
Quiet people. Well, what did you do after the experience with the dampers in the oil field?
Well, meanwhile, of course, the company had built a new facility up in the area across from General Tires in one part down there. And all of the damper business was moved out there, as were the contractors and machine shops and most of the manufacturing facilities from the downtown plant. And at that time, I was made superintendent of the plant on Bond Street, as it was known. And so I don't just remember how many years I was superintendent, but an opportunity arose somewhere along the line when another young man left the company to become the administrative assistant to the manager, which was a title that merely covered the men who represented the Wabash factory, particularly among the other divisions and factories of the company, to get them to utilize our facility for any of the requirements that we could do for them, particularly in sheet metal work. And, well, let's see, I was engaged in that activity until 1962, I believe it was, when we decided to move most of that activity out of the Wabash plant. There was a general reorganization of the entire structure of the corporation at that time. And all of that, and the good many of the people at that time were moved out, as you probably heard from some of the others you
I'm going to ask you about that later.
Yeah, and fortunately for me, a job remained for me. I became, at that time, the purchasing agent for Mr. Daniel. Because it was, of course, just 2 years after that time that he was scheduled to retire, and at that time I became purchasing agent, which job I remained until I retired in 1970.
That reorganization took place in 58.
62.
62, and you retired in 70.
Right.
About 8 years.
Yeah, right.
You were more or less then making a lateral move, actually making a vertical move down a step or sideways, or how would you describe it today?
Well, it was an entirely different phase of the business. Purchasing was rapidly becoming, and looked upon, as a money-making part of the company, of any company at that time, and becoming a much more important fraction of the overall picture of any factory's operation. And as a result, I would say that the job was not as important a job as the one I had, but then, as I mentioned, I was one of the fortunate ones to be retained in the employ of the company at this particular location, because a good many of the jobs just disappeared and there were no other ones there for them. So you had a choice. Well, I chose to stay here. I liked it here. Meanwhile, we bought this farm, quite in 1948, actually. And we enjoyed living here, and I didn't want to move to another location.
Well, you stayed under Nick then for 2 years.
Yes, I stayed under Nick for 2 years, and then he retired in 1964, and I became the first in the family. I remained then until I retired in 1970.
So many questions, I don't want to forget a lot of them that come up when you mention these different things.
Right.
When Bob Ensler came here with the Freeport gang, as they referred to it, was there a time there when you really thought they were going to close the plant, or what was your impression, really? After everything started going on, what?
Well, of course, since I had traveled extensively to all of the factories and locations of the company, I knew a good many people in the business position, so the information that I had picked up in here led me to believe that in the total corporate reorganization, that Wabash was going to be severely depleted from a lot of the work it had there. And so I knew what was coming, at least I figured that was going to come. And of course, when Bob Ensler came here, he came here with the strict purpose of moving out, reducing, combining, and when he had achieved it, he moved back to Freeport, Microchip, where he was.
You never thought that the plant would be closed out?
No, I never did, no.
When, going back to another question, let's talk about labor relations. And, what's the impression of the labor relations over the years, like when you started, compared to the company union and the international and so forth? Let's start with, what were the labor relations when you started?
Well, when I started with the company, it was during the war years. And so far as I was knowledgeable at that time, being a neophyte in my trade in the factory, I'd say the labor relations there were excellent. In fact, they were so good, and that was one of the reasons why I stayed there instead of moving on to something else. And at that time, they had a local union, and it was called the Regulator Employees Association. But during the war years, if you'll remember, most of those things, wages and working conditions, et cetera, were controlled by the government. So there wasn't too much that could be done. However, after the close of the war years, and when Honeywell began to grow big in this local plant, we reactivated the Regulated Employees Association. In fact, I was president of it for several years until I got into the management end of the business, and as a result then I left it. But it was active for quite a number of years until, well, I don't remember the exact year when this happened, but we had brought in through Wabash several big jobs, and the employment went from about 8 or 900 up to 1,500 at that time. We were working 3 shifts a day in this particular thing out there. And as a result, there were a lot of people brought in and hired from areas like Marion and even further than that. People who were accustomed to belonging to international union locals. And I think it was about that time that they became quite active in fishing for a vote. And by a very narrow margin, the international union that they have there now won. Of course, they represented directly. But all during the years prior to that time, during all the years when Mo's work was the manager, I'd say that labor relations at Honeywell and the Wabash location are about as good as you'd find in any place in the whole country. Communication was good both ways. And of course, Mo's being a local boy, he enjoyed the respect and the loyalty of the people that worked there. And he worked for the company, for Honeywell, but he also worked for his people, and they knew it.
I think that was 56 when they came.
I don't remember the exact year.
Going back to this subject of the company union, you were not in on the formation of the union itself.
No, it was formed back before World War II. I think Howard Smith was familiar with it because he was in it long before. But as I say, during the war years when I worked there, it wasn't active at all. But subsequent to that time, management wanted to deal with a representative group of people who represented their employees. And as a result, I think there were several of us that got busy and reactivated the local union.
That was the question I was going to ask. Howard brought out to me that he was encouraged by management to form this union back in the 50s. Was there any overt or clandestine directive to you to get the union reactivated as a company union? Or?
No, as I recall, there were several of us that were approached by the union that represented employees in the Minneapolis plant. So we got together and talked this thing over and decided, well, why do we have to pay tribute to someone else? There's an organization here, let's get it going. And that's exactly what we did.
But you had nothing from management of it?
No. The only thing I can remember is about that time, after a group of us decided what we were going to do, we went up to see Doc Leland, who was personnel man, and he was also the superintendent of the whole plant at that time, and we told him what we were going to do. So he arranged for us to meet with Mo's work and explain what we were going to do. And Mo said, no, this is fine, because in the light of conditions that were existing at that time, everything was growing by leaps and bounds. Why, it's a lot easier to deal with an organized group of people on working conditions, wages, etc., than just trying to deal with everybody at once.
Yeah.
So we got together, had a meeting, reactivated the organization, so to speak, elected officers. They elected me president, and I was president for 2 or 3 years until, as I say, until I became part of management, and I'm no longer eligible.
I think Charles Schwab told me that he served on one of the unions.
Right, yeah.
He was very appreciative of the fact that he was able to work after he was 65, and he said that the opportunity to serve it on.
Well, at that time, no one knew which women were working. There was quite a few of the fellows there that were way over 65 and working. As a matter of fact, they were some of the best workmen they had.
What was your relationship with Mose? Did you get along well with him?
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. He had an unusual knack in that, together with his loyalty to the company and his own plans for developing the Wabash plant, bringing more business in, he still had the people that worked there at heart. And he was a great believer in promoting from within. And he did a lot of work, expended a lot of effort to upgrade many people who worked and had worked there for a good many years, and helped them develop themselves into the various positions in which they later had. Well, the tomatoes not too small. Because Doc was already a big part of management there, and there were a number of other young men coming along who demonstrated ability in management, and he used to send us to the various seminars at Purdue University, University of Wisconsin, brought in men from the extension services at Purdue University and conducted classes here in management, industrial psychology. So in that, I thought that he was really unusual as a manager. And then personally, of course, he was a very nice, easy fellow to get along with.
It's, of course, the pitfalls of the system of Moses was, and Moses out, quite a few went with him, didn't they?
Yes, he Moses fought hard within the limits, of course, that he had to keep the international union from getting in there, because he got to deal with the local group. And of course, on May 1, 1950, he tried to get many things for him. And as I understand, in later years, the union said, out for Moses, and that's all there is to it.
I think I heard that.
All right, absolutely.
Did you find eventually pretty useful?
No, I didn't. Hensler come down here to do a job. He was a very outspoken man. He did his job. He did it in the best way that he knew how. I had a lot of personal confidence in his goddamn person. And personally, I liked the way he operated. In other words, he was the type of fellow called spade spade. If he had something to tell you, he called you and told you, like black and white, with a few words possible, so there was no misunderstanding. But I suspect that he probably incurred a lot of animosity here for the very job that he had to do. No hatchet man is loved. And he had a job to do, and of course, apparently in the past he demonstrated his ability to tear down an organization and reorganize it, or build it up as the case might be. I know he's been down and got the job done. He still has a good many friends here, and I don't think last summer I didn't see him, but I know all the previous years in the summertime after he left here, he used to come down here and play golf and sit around and see some of the fellows he knew, and I didn't understand, talk to him another time when he was back here. But, no, I had no animosity to God. As a matter of fact, I could have just as been, severed from the company like a good many were at that time. But he told me what he had for me and what he thought I could fulfill, and I had the choice to take it or not.
How old were you then?
Well, let's see. In 1962, I would have been 57.
You were in no position to go out and start all over again, obviously, at that age.
Well, I didn't intend to, as a matter of fact. It wouldn't have been the correct move for me. Of course, I did have opportunity to go to one or two of the other divisions of the company, but I just didn't want to leave.
I did Mickey McDaniel call 2 days later.
Is that so?
3 hours.
Oh, yeah.
How was it working for Nick?
Right. Oh, yeah.
He was a great company man.
Yes, he was. Nick, boy, he was a great person using. Well, a Scotsman, boy, he spent the company's dollar like they were his own. So Nick was well liked. With every company and every sales he was dealt with. Very well. As he was with both of us that worked with him in those days.
When he retired, did he retire early?
No, he retired at 65, and he was that was in 1954. Well, I remember, I think Nick would have liked to continue working, but meanwhile, the company had changed its mandatory requirements as to retirement, And although you could work after 65, I think until you were 67, I believe, if you wanted to, the company wanted to, you passed the physical exam, but you could no longer be in a position, a supervisory position. So in this case, I mean, what would there have been for Nick to do? Because at that time, as you know, the organization had got somewhat smaller, and there just wouldn't have been anything for Nick to do other than keeping with his ability and his age. So, as I recall, this is not official, but this one I heard, and you definitely decided to be better if you didn't.
Did you ever meet Mr. Honeywell?
Oh, yeah. A lot of times.
What was the occasion when you first met Mr. Honeywell? Or your first...
Subsequent to the war years, of course, Mr. Honeywell's prime interest was the completion of the Honeywell Memorial Center. And a group of us who worked at the company were asked by him to help out in finishing the building, getting the ductwork in for the heating and ventilating, installing doors, other property work that remained to be done at this particular time. So it was about 8 or 10 of us that worked there a good many weeks after working hours at the plant on Saturdays, doing these jobs. And of course, Mr. Honeywell liked to know what was going on, and he frequently was there in the evening, on Saturdays, to see what was done, and see if it met with his ideas of how to proceed. And right there in connection, I can say that I think Mr. Honeywell is the most particular man that I ever met in my life. He had his own ideas of how things could be done, and regardless of what it took, tear down and do it over again, or bring in something else to do it the way he wanted it, that's the way it was done. But from about that time onward, I was a little closer to Rose, and Mr. Honeywell, of course, still had his office there at the downtown plant. So that frequently I'd get called into his office with knowing something that he was reading up about having done down at the building. So I got to meet him and talk to him very frequently.
Do you remember any time you ever got mad?
No, because, of course, I probably knew Mr. Honeywell in his mellow years, so to speak. He was no longer an active board member. I think at that time he was honorary chairman of the board. And his entire interest, of course, was the Honeywell Memorial Building. And, I never could be angry with anything that he made us undo, because I recognized in him something that probably affected me a good deal in all my working years with him. How particular you can be to get a job done in the right way. And I think this is one of the reasons why the Honeywell Corporation at that time, during the years when it was with the Honeywell Heating Factory Company, developed its reputation, because if it wasn't right, it didn't go. And when something got out that wasn't right, it was brought back and fixed. And as I recall having been told by some of the old timers, it was time to, and Mr. Honeywell was down to his last dime, so to speak, rebuilding something that had got out that wasn't right.
Can you remember some specific foundation building there that you guys had terrified several times?
Yes. But Father Butter did a good deal of the sheet metal work they run in the actual duct systems and whatnot. One evening we were installing the heating ducts beneath the scans there in what is now the woodworking room. And we just about got it all done. It was quite a tricky little job. There were a lot of angles and offsets that you had to go around, and you come in there that evening and you kind of stood back and you looked this thing all over, and so he called one of his boys over, and Byron Swimmer, who was there that night. And as a result, when we didn't like quite the way it looked, so we had to tear it all down right back to the beginning and do it over again the way it wanted. Right at that same time, the fellow who was building superintendent for him, he's dead now, I don't recall his name, but he worked with Mr. Honeywell. I didn't really read that. He was down there with Mr. Honeywell, and he had noticed two bricks, tile bricks in that wall down in that room that were a different color, and the rest of them are all a buff brick. Been down there, you probably noticed.
Now that's in the...
in that what's now the woodworking room.
Yes.
So the upside of it was, we had to get the people out that did the work and remove those bricks that were not the right color and replace them with ones that were all the same. We helped install a good many doors, inside doors, and they all had to be mirror reproduction, one of the other. In other words, if there were two swinging doors or two doors that entered into the room or some other building there, the woodwork had to match those mirror images. If we did it, we got one out and put another one that did fit it.
Did Mr. Honeywell keep track of your time?
No, he didn't. Of course, we just turned in the time ticket to one of the ladies in the office who kept track of this stuff. We were just paid our regular paycheck, and that portion of it just was his, was just included in our regular paycheck. No, he never kept track of anything that I know of. No, he may have unbeknownst to me, but
He did.
did he?
Yes, they had the cost and the exact breakdown of everything that was done.
Mm-hmm.
That was all turned. He never said anything about it.
No,
In other words, if it took 60 hours to do something that you could normally do in a half hour, he never questioned it. If you wanted it to play the things to you.
No, I know him. As far as I know, nothing was ever questioned. But I will say that all the fellows that worked for him in these I mentioned didn't cheat him out of any time. I mean, when he paid us for an hour's work, he got an hour's work. Because, well, they were all fellows who took a good deal of pride in what they were doing. And we knew, of course, what the building was and what it meant to him, and I think we all became just as thick as he was.
He had a knack, I think, for attracting people. I guess if he didn't have that knack, he got rid of it. So the people that wanted to take pride in that.
I believe that would be true. As I say, all the time we were working there, of course, he was there a good deal of the time, in and out, looking over what's being done. But as far as relating anything to us concerning what he was doing, we didn't.
Do you remember any funny incidents? Took place when you were working on it?
No, not particularly, because of course most of the hours that we worked there were not the factory hours, in the evening, and on Saturdays, but at that time he was anxious to get the place done inside so that they could start having the basketball games there. But most of the schools didn't have the games that they have today. A lot of the high school games were played there. Yeah. And there was a lot of work left to be done. Got it done.
Do you remember Mrs. Honeywell going around and all?
No, I don't. Of course, particularly after I was part of the management team, of course I was in on a lot of the social activities. That's Mr. and Mrs. Honeywell sponsored, so of course I got to see her a good deal socially. But, I've seen it at the building, but of course I didn't really enjoy flying in different areas. But at that time, of course, we still is like to them for the accomplished pianist. And she's very studio out there. That's what it's done.
You ever do any work out specials like that?
No, I never.
Jim Rand said the same about that. Work that he used to do out there.
Yeah, there was quite a few fellows that done work out there. And that's most of my extracurricular activity in working was there too.
Was Paul Silver still here when you...
No, most was his name.
Of course, Moses is dead now.
Yeah, no family.
What do you think looking back after when you saw his career in Honeywell?
Well, I think I could sum it up very easily and expressively in just saying that I wish I'd have known about it 20 years before I did. Honeywell was and is, I think, one of the great companies in our country today. The main reason, I think, is, of course, the fact that they've always been a conservative company, and they've always been a company that's been concerned about the people that work for them. I've seen, of course, in the times that I worked there, I've been in the ways that they developed of keeping track of their people and giving them opportunities and knowing what opportunities their people wanted. And, of course, with the tremendous growth of the computer business after the company got into them, it's opened up a great field, particularly for good many of the younger men that come along after their college days in the field of electronics, and then, of course, into the various environmental control systems that the company was get into and developed, both in Minneapolis and here in Wabash.
Do you think there'll always be something there? There'll always be a factory there. Have you ever thought that there wouldn't be?
No, I've always thought that there would be some part of the company here in Wabash. But basically, you might say this is really where the company started, right here. The birthplace is Honeywell, as it's known. Of course, we all know that the Minneapolis regulated company is always located in Minneapolis. But the company, of course, adopted the name Honeywell. And as such, I think Honeywell will always be represented in something.
That seems to be the impression.
Well, I base my thought now on the fact that it's hard to believe that a company, even one as big as Honeywell is today, would expend the millions of dollars for the facility they have here right now if they plan to get rid of it very soon.
How about your pension? You think that that's the thing?
Yeah. I think the pension plan the company has, and that's part of the name, Joe, is very good. Excellent.
I think that's important.
I think it is, because, well, after you reach your retirement years,
Damn important if you want to eat, I guess.
well, everything that you get in the way of income is important. Because at this time, you're not so much interested in how much you can save, but how much you get spent.
Right. You enjoy retirement?
Oh, yeah, very much so. Yeah.
How do you keep busy?
Well, it's a paradox. We often sit down once in a while and say, boys, let's slow down a little bit. We don't find time to do all the things we want to do. And of course, I have this place here, although I don't do the farming myself. There's a lot of work here that you can do if you want to, and this is the kind of thing we enjoy. The fields, of course, the farms are rented out, but I've got about 22 acres of pasture over there. I keep that moving. I rebuild fences, and I've done quite a lot of work on the house here, and I'm still doing more work. So, I've got all the work that I want to do or can do for the rest of my life right here if I choose to do it.
When did you get married? What year?
1927, June 4th.
wife's maiden name?
The maiden name was Dorothy Dobler, D-O-B-L-E-R.
And how did you meet her?
Met her at a Halloween party. Well, actually, she worked at Swift's General Office, where I worked after school when I went to high school, and that's really what we got started. And my father was a employment manager for Clifton Company at that particular time. And Dorothy's brother worked after school, too. Of course, I got a friend with him. He was a friend with Dorothy.
So you had one son?
Yeah, one son, John. He was born in 1928.
Who now lives?
Yeah, he lives in Montgomery, well, close to Cincinnati. And quite the propulsion engineer with General Electric. One of the boys that things we didn't do right when we submerged the FSC program.
That was his.
Yeah, he worked hard and long on this. All General Electric, of course, developed these engines that work. He had been used in that. But, of course, they have many other engines that are manufactured there. And, of course, as in many other fields of industry today, there's always research and development going on in any case. And, of course, it's quite propulsion continues unabated.
Do you have any reflections of looking back at 70 years? Society, Honeywell, community, association, family, anything might be of value for someone looking at this in the future?
Well, I think someone looking at this whole picture would probably just look at Wabash, for example. One of the reasons why we like small town living, although we didn't live in it, we lived close to it and worked in it, so to speak, is the fact that the relationship with everybody else that lives there is on a more friendly community basis than it is in big cities. In big cities, for example, I know that we lived in an apartment building. People in an adjacent apartment or
changes. You won't have to worry about running out of cases to finish up there. Now we're talking reflections, and maybe you want to start all over.
On small town living. When you compare living in or adjacent to, you're having most of your relationships with a small city like Wabash, as compared to, for example, in the years you lived in Chicago, where you could live, as we did, in an apartment building, and the folks next door probably had a bedroom adjoining yours, and you slept within 5 feet of somebody for 5 years and never even saw them, let alone know them or even speak to them. Whereas in a smaller city like Wabash, for example, it's impossible to walk down any street at any time and not see someone you know, and even if they don't know you, say hello and exchange greetings or remarks about the weather or something else after all. And this is the type of thing that always appeals to us rather than to live in a larger city where you're just practically just a non-entity, you're just another population figure. So I think anyone that likes the closeness of the atmosphere in a small city like Wabash, we're going to find anything in the nature. On the other hand, it's like all the facilities that are in big cities. You just be lost there, that's all. So it's got to be something that you like.
There's always a couple of questions that I ask. One is on the Ku Klux Klan. So you would be old enough. Were you ever familiar with it? Did you ever join it? Or did you have an association with it?
No, I never joined it. Of course, I knew about it.
You would have been living in Chicago in the heyday of the Klan.
Yes, but we used to come down to a lake called Fish Lake up near Fort Indiana, where the company had ice houses. And in the summer they used to sleeping facilities for the employees to come and enjoy a few days at the lake. And of course the Klan was very active in that part of Indiana. I can remember several times being the burning cross gatherings with the Klan, but I was never in the process. No. Although I've talked to some of the fellows, of course, who lived here for a long time.
You were never approached to join?
No, never.
Of
course, when we come down here in 1939, the Klan, of course, was ill received from that day, so it was not very active.
They were all phased out
prior to that time.
How about the Depression?
Well, I can remember the Depression, of course, very well, because that was the early years of our married life. And, of course, our son then was big. And I was, again, in 50 in Chicago. I had a job all during those times, but our work was done something like about 70 or 80 hours a week, or as long as there was work to be done. But I can't say that I was called in with horror, possibly because I was fortunate enough to get a job all during this time, and although we didn't have a lot of money to spend, it seemed that we had a lot of fun. Every young people, young couples in our same circumstances, and we enjoyed doing a lot of the things that didn't require the expenditure of a lot of money. For example, if someone got a new crossword puzzle that was a dandy, why, us would all get together and work on that. And there were a number of other games that didn't cost much money, which were a lot of fun to do, and we played a lot of games. Another games of cards with other young couples, and as I look back on it now, possibly all the bad things have sort of healed over. And I can look back and just say that, other than the long hours of work we had to put in, we enjoyed life. We used to go out occasionally on Saturday nights downtown Saudi to the hotels where there was dancing and funning going on. Enjoyed it. Most of the years we had an automobile and driving. Of course, back in that day in a city like Chicago, transportation was a big problem. There were streetcars and elevators and suburban trains where you had easy access to wherever you wanted to go. But I can remember some things, though, that didn't particularly concern me, that were pretty tough. And no such thing as unemployment insurance. Welfare was practically non-existent. Those fellows that were unfortunate in not having a job just had to eke out a living any way they could. And I can remember talking to some of the boys, I think of this, telling me about some of the things they did around here. We cottage cheese and sold it from door to door. But anyway, to make enough to feed you and your family.
Was this a Democratic Party of Chicago, or just a hotbed of Democratic Party at this time, or not?
I just don't recall too much about politics. I think most of the mayors during the time that I recall were Republicans. So whether the local politics were the same, I just don't remember. You know, there's another strange thing. In a big city, it seems like you're far removed from the central core of what's going on, really, politically. It's different from what it is here.
You know, intimate contact.
That's right, yeah. Well, politics in the smaller community is part of your life. Up there, usually, the only time you're interested in politics is you wanted the local precinct committeeman or whatever to do something for you, fix the ticket or arrange to get your garbage picked up when it was missed or something like that. Well, and you always felt that, whether you voted or not didn't make an awful lot of difference because the machine usually had it the way we wanted it anyway.
So what would you attribute to your own personal satisfaction and success in Wabash? I could pretty well put my finger on it, but I want to know what your own self-analysis of it is.
Well, you mean as far as the company?
Well, just your own personal satisfaction and the contented and...
Oh, well, I think basically it's knowing and liking people.
That's right. You got involved with people.
Yeah, just got involved with people. I mean, this is the thing that I think is at least to me, the most satisfaction.
And that's, you get that satisfaction from you, and it's just
That's right. It's a two-way street.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think that anyone that hasn't done it has really missed a lot of it.
Right, because, I'm quite sure that with very, very few exceptions, no one can or even wants to live alone. There are times when you feel alone, sure, anyone does that. Most of the time, I mean, you want to be associated with people. You want to be able to walk down the street and say hello to everybody that has something to say in the same way to you. And it's been my experience that even among strangers, if you smile and say hello, even if they don't do it that particular time, the next time they see you, they do. Mm-hmm. So it's a two-way communication. In other words, you get to give or get.
Do you think, do you feel that you think any differently now than you did 20, 30, 40 years ago?
Oh, yes, I think so. I think that, well, everyone, as they grow along in years, gathers experience. In other words, the trial and error department begins to teach you a few things. So that even though you may not notice it yourself so much, you do change your outlook, your activities to some extent.
Do you consider yourself more conservative now than...
Oh, yeah. I can remember, of course, when you're real young, you never think of consequences. If there's something to do, man, let's go do it. But there comes a point when you begin to think, I don't know, let's stop and think a minute. What's going to happen if we do this or don't do it, or the case might be. So you become a little more aware of consequences. I think that takes place somewhere along in your 30s, too, for most people.
But you would say you're more conservative now than you were.
Oh, yes, I would say.
You thinking politically same way, or did you say that?
Well, since my folks are Republican and have always voted Republican, when we lived in Chicago, we voted Republican. Probably ought to have it. But now since we've been down here, you know the people involved. Mm-hmm. So although we register as Republicans, it doesn't necessarily follow that everybody that we vote for is a Republican, because I need to be inclined to hear what the person a little more.
What would you say is the most satisfying thing about it?
Well, I think I was had so many satisfying things like in my lifetime. I never got to particularly pick one out that gave me the most satisfaction. But I think, I'd say that purchasing this place and staying along, developing the way we have, and the success that we do now, and different things that gave me the most satisfaction.
What would you say?
In addition to the workaday life and the things that I was able to achieve here, because most of the satisfaction comes from it.
How about the, what would you say, the low point?
I think probably the time between you come out of school and into work, and I have a difficult time finding myself exactly what I'm going to do. Not knowing exactly what you wanted, what was there, what am I doing, what will be best for me in the long run. And not knowing. I think that's the thing to work with.
You think that this feeling at 57 again would have come back with the not knowing and Honeywell level? Not the same thing.
No, really, because at that time, although I did want to stay with Honeywell, as I mentioned before, there were some things I knew before all the things from about it that began, and if such a thing would happen, that I'd leave the company, and we'd worry about it when we got to get through.
Seems to be a thread that communications through the stories of so many men like yourself here, they knew or they had the knowledge of what was going to happen, and they believed it. They believed management and so forth. Do you think that's true today? I mean, if management gets up and says that there's concern for it, do you think that the average employee pays to believe in it?
Well, I can only base the answer you are on what I read, and I was doing the basis of what I read, the answer is no. Yeah, you know, I think one of the things I think that has brought about that philosophy in my mind is the news. Different people. Advertising. For example, I've got this point, I don't believe anything I read or anything I see from commercials concerning anything until I found out for myself. Because we've been bombarded with so much that turns out to be half-truth or no truth if you think everything is a grain of salt. Well, I think that's a philosophy that's going to bleed over into other areas like food.
Good observation.
Yeah. Particularly if you've ever been part of very committees, non-paid committees, who live everywhere and see the way things fall apart.
Well, any other comments? I'm going to close it off.
No, I think this covers the whole ball right. All right. I would say that again, this part of the country is very little or nothing. Still here, at least the ones that feel comfortable with.
Thanks to you, Ben, for the interview. This is George Dingleby, interviewing